So it used to be that homeowners planned to pay off their mortgages and live out retirement debt free. But a 2018 survey by national mortgage firm American Financing found that 44% of Americans between the ages of 60 and 70 have a mortgage when they retire. Nearly 17% think it's possible that they will never pay off that mortgage, and a stunning 32% predict it will take more than 8 years. So, why is that? Well, for many families, it's the price of sending their child to a costly college. We've all heard student college loan debt is growing. Americans owe over $1.77 trillion in student loan debt, 43.6 million borrowers as of 2022. 3 million people over age 60 are still paying off college loans. Prior to the pandemic, 11.1% of student loans were 90 days or more delinquent or in default. The average monthly student loan payment among those not in deferment was $300. According to the AARP Public Policy Institute, the percentage of families headed by someone 50 or older with student loan debt more than tripled between 1989 and 2016, from 3.1% to 9.6%. Since 2004, student loan debt among those 60 and older has grown the fastest of any age group. According to the Government Accountability Office, 114,000 people 50 and older had their Social Security payments garnished in 2015 to repay student debt. The problem that we're dealing with is that families often overpay for college, take on too much debt, and hurt their savings and retirement plans because they tumbled unprepared into the late stage college funding pressure cooker. It's hard to think about college planning as a major financial planning challenge for families when you just want to send your kid to a good school. There's nothing wrong with that, but we need context for understanding all the forces that will come into play. Here's a quick rundown of many of the key aspects of this challenge. First, students and parents feel the academic and social pressure of competition. Colleges target your child, some wanting him or her to apply mostly so they can reject the application. Impending deadlines promote tension and rash decisions. Your student's college list may be unrealistic, influenced by popular ranking lists, and uninformed about actual costs, degree earning power, and the average number of years to graduation. School counselors are not trained to help families figure out how to pay for college, and families lack knowledge and guidance. All these dynamics contribute to something none of us want to have happen: overpaying for college. And that is why we're here today. That late stage college funding pressure cooker can deliver some very unhappy results. Families act rashly, and as a result, many parents tap home equity or take out large second mortgages to pay for colleges. And as we saw earlier, many have not paid those off by the time they retire. Some divert retirement funds to pay tuition and have to work longer than they had hoped or planned. The glaring truth is that most families just lack knowledge and guidance on how to get the best price for college. If you are joining here for the very first time, my name is Eric Hagan. I am president of Capital Consulting Group, or CCG. CCG consists of myself, our Chief Investment Officer, Tom Fox, financial advisors, Dan Oshman and Rana Grant, and our client support team, John Knutson and Marilyn Westmark. Our goal is to help individuals, couples, and families make their next financial decision, and the one after that, a good one. Now, you may be wondering, why is a financial professional here today talking about college? Well, I do this as a service to my clients and our community because I've seen many families struggle with these issues. So pat yourself on the back for being here and committing your time to learning more about college planning and funding. I can assure you one thing about this presentation is that I believe you will be better prepared to meet the late stage college planning challenges after listening to this talk. Getting kids through grade school and then high school is hard enough. You've been working and working, maybe saving for the eventual college tuition, then boom, your kid is a junior or senior in high school, and you realize there's a lot more to do. The cost of tuition plus room and board are higher than you expected. Stress increases as you receive piles of slick brochures from fancy colleges and hear your friends talk about where their kids are going. As I mentioned earlier, this leads to poor decisions, which may negatively impact your family's financial health for years and even decades to come. I've seen that happen, and I want to help you before you get to that stage. Your son or daughter can go to a good school, have a great college experience, and do it without saddling any of you with undue debt. I've seen that happen too. That's why I do this presentation. And in case you're wondering, I'm in the thick of it myself. My oldest is off to college, and I am knee deep in trying to comprehend everything there is about the whole process. As a financial advisor, I am always looking for ways to get the most out of every dollar. And I have to. My wife Kelly and I have a lot of kids to get through college. If I can pass this on to you, the things I'm learning about helping my own kids, then I consider that worth every single minute. Now, as I get started, I also want to assure you that this is not a sales presentation. You will not hear anything remotely close to a sales pitch today. Today is 100% educational. At CCG, we put a lot of emphasis on education. Today's presentation is one in a series of messages that we put together as a part of our Capital Classroom educational series. You can view past presentations and find our entire upcoming schedule at capitalclassroom.com. With that, welcome and thank you for being here and committing your time to learning more about college planning and funding. Now, in order to help you remember what you learned today, I'm going to share a sheet that looks like this one. It's kind of hard to see on the screen there, but it looks like this one. And these are the notes for the presentation that you're about to see. So you don't have to worry about writing everything that I talk about down. All the key ideas of this presentation are right here for you to read later. And I'll talk to you about how to get a copy of that. Plus, to help you learn more about what we discussed today, I'm going to be offering you another handout that's called the Savvy Parent's Guide to Cutting College Costs. And this is a good overview of the entire topic. 4-page opens up, great tool, great resource. And then lastly, for those of you that want to see how some of this information applies to your unique situation, if you stay until the very end, each of you will be given the opportunity to receive a complimentary college money report. This personalized report gives you answers to 3 critical things every family needs to know before entering the college funding maze. All right, back to our presentation. When it comes to late stage college planning, the biggest problem is that there is no plan. It's not well thought out. But until you send in your acceptance letter, it is not too late. So let's continue. Now, I don't want to make things seem completely hopeless. The fact that you're here today indicates that you're ready to tackle what is actually a very big financial planning issue for families. That's a good sign because, as you'll see, there are steps to take to start taking now that will make this period of your life less stressful. You'll be less pressured if you have a late stage college funding strategy. By now, you're probably tired of me introducing all the complications. Maybe you're thinking, what is the first most important thing that I need to know so I can avoid overpaying? And that brings us to our first key. Key number 1, parents must lead the college selection process with your child as co-pilot because you have the most to lose. Lose means picking the wrong school, overpaying for it, or underestimating total costs, including how many years it actually takes to earn a degree. I'm not saying that the student should not be involved in the college planning process. That's not true at all. But the parents need to know what they're willing to pay and where the money comes from. It's all too easy to go into the searching process blindly, looking at every school that shows up at a college fair or sending you glossy marketing materials. Then the student falls in love with a certain school. I knew a dad who let his son apply to his dream school, NYU, just to see. Of course, the son got in, and the father found it impossible to tell him no. Unfortunately, NYU, which has traditionally been notoriously stingy with their scholarships and aid, and the dad ended up paying much more than he could really afford. It's much better to know your facts and figures at the beginning and search for colleges with eyes wide open. Here are a few items about college that you don't see or hear about much, but I want to put them in front of you as part of understanding why it's so important for you to be running the college selection process for your child. 24% of college students drop out after the first year. 9% transfer to another college for their sophomore year. And college dropouts are 4 times more likely to default on student loans than those who graduate. There are several large organizations, most notably US News and World Reports, who love to tout their college rankings list. Don't be fooled. These are not lists that you should use to determine your child's college lists. Why? Because they encourage institutional bad behavior, cheating, and admission tricks. They have a formula that can be gamed. They make popularity a big ratings factor. They use 6-year graduation rates. They encourage schools to favor affluent students through merit scholarships, and they don't measure what's important. So next, you might be wondering, so let's say I am in charge leading this process. The news is filled with the rising price of college. Can I send my child to a good school at all without blowing my savings? And the answer is yes, which brings us to our second key point. The news media likes to hype the rising costs of college and staggering student loans. These are true, but they miss the important detail that higher education is actually a buyer's market, despite news about increased costs and high rejection rates. Price discounts are quite common among state universities as well as private institutions. Schools give discounts through grants and scholarships. One thing you should take away from at this slide is it's clearly not just A students who get scholarships and grants. Just look at the high percentages of students getting price breaks. Nearly everyone who attends a private college receives some type of price cut from his or her school. For years now, the tuition discount has been creeping up. The percentage of students who receive grants and scholarships at private schools is actually at an historic high. The average tuition discount at private colleges and universities is also at an historic level. This discount is 62.1%. On this slide, you'll see an example of how the typical discount slashes the tuition price. And this discount figure also comes from the same 2023 report from the National Association of College and University Business Officers. Now, you might naturally be wondering why schools are giving out so much money. Here's the reason. For most schools, again, it's a buyer's market. This might seem strange because all the media attention is focused on the most elite universities that reject nearly all applicants. In fact, the schools at the top of the rankings compete to see who can reject the most teenagers. Most schools, however, don't enjoy this kind of advantage. They have to work hard to fill their freshman slots. And to do that, they have to offer financial enticements to get students to come to their schools. Here's a closer look at what colleges are up against during the admission season. College is a buyer's market except for the most elite schools. Only 36% of admission directors at state schools met their goals by May 1st. 85% of admission directors at private and public schools were moderately or very concerned about meeting enrollment goals. And only 5% of admission directors said they had not been concerned about meeting enrollment goals for the calendar year, the school year 2022 2023. Now, you might be feeling intrigued or overwhelmed with this new information. Regardless, you probably want to know, what are the key things to focus on in order to successfully navigate the college funding process. And that brings us to key number three. Key number three is to gather the pegs, or the price, expected family contribution, graduation rate, and starting salary. You want to do this for your schools to start the process of identifying the best deal and the best price. PEGS is an easy acronym we created that speaks to some key information gathering that will get you going in your college journey. And again, PEG stands for price, expected family contribution, graduation rate, and salary. So let's look at each one briefly. We start with price, which means net price calculators. You use these tools to discover a school's true cost. So let's take a look at that. One of the most infuriating, one of the most infuriating aspects of the college admission process is that traditionally families could not know what any college was going to cost until their child received his or her financial aid or merit award package. Even worse, they might not have gotten that offer until the spring, which would give them little time to select a school by the deposit deadline, which has traditionally been May 1st. Applying to schools, however, does not have to be a financial crapshoot if you use net price calculators before your child applies to any colleges. A net price calculator is supposed to provide you with a personalized estimate of what a particular school will really cost. The net price represents what a student will have to pay after scholarships and grants from the federal and state governments and the school itself are subtracted. When using a calculator, some families will discover that the cost of a $55,000 university will be $20 or even $10,000 or even lower. For other families, the cost really will be $55,000. Let's say, for example, that a college costs $50,000 and the student will receive a $30,000 award from the school and a state grant of $5,000. The net price for this student would be $15,000. The net price equals the true price of the college because it only considers free money and disregards loans when calculating the cost of a school. Federal law requires schools to post a net price calculator for freshmen on their websites. Some schools also provide a calculator for transfer students. If you want to avoid budget busting schools, it's critical to know what the actual prices of particular schools will be before your child falls in love with them. In fact, turning to net price calculators could ultimately save you tens of thousands of dollars by focusing your efforts on schools that will be more generous to your family. Too many parents get guilted into paying for a college that far outstrips their budget. This can jeopardize their own retirement plans. And knowing in advance what schools cost will help families draw up an appropriate college list and reduce or eliminate financial surprises. Thanks to net price calculators, there's no reason why students and parents can't have a pretty good idea what a college will offer before deciding whether to apply. Helpful calculators will require information from your tax return and your latest non retirement investment account statements. So you want to gather them up before using those calculators. Your families should turn to these calculators to get a handle on what sort of applicants capture the best awards at an institution. What kind of grade point averages or test scores does it take for a student to win a greater award from a specific school? With this tool, families can manipulate the figures to see whether it would be worth it for the child, for instance, to take the SAT or ACT again. Would a higher test score boost a child's potential package? Would a slightly higher GPA even matter? It can also be important to measure what impact, if any, a family's home equity would have on an award. With so much at stake, it's worth taking the time to use these calculators strategically. Now, it can be hard finding a net price calculator on some school websites. An easy way to do it is to Google the name of the school along with net price calculator. You need to understand that not all calculators are good ones. The weakest calculators rely on the federal template. Using these could take less than a minute to complete. The questions are minimal, which leads to dubious cost estimates. The federal calculator only asks for income ranges, but a good calculator will require figures off your latest income tax return. Bad calculators also rely on old cost data. Some net price calculators are still using 2017 to 2018 costs, so check how old the figures are. These federal calculators are only meant to provide personalized cost estimates to families seeking need-based aid. And even then, the need-based aid answers are simply averages. They do not calculate merit scholarships. If you see these icons displayed on a website, it means the school uses the federal net price calculator. Not all schools that use the federal calculator, however, will display these icons. So keep that in mind. All right, now let's move on to the E in PEGS, and that stands for Expected Family Contribution. This is a federally calculated number that tells you what you are expected to pay. Your expected family contribution is a dollar figure that represents what a financial aid formula believes your household should be able to pay for 1 year of a child's college education. For schools that strictly use the free application for federal student aid, the new term for EFC is Student Aid Index. The CSS profile, which is the other major aid application, will continue to use the term EFC. So your SAI or EFC is not necessarily what you're going to pay. Your EFC or SAI is based on a number of factors, including income, non-retirement money, education account assets, size of the household, and marital status of the parents. The CSS profile also cares about the number of students in college. The EFC SAI will give you a good idea whether you will qualify for need-based aid or if you should seek out schools that provide merit scholarships. This helps as you go shopping for colleges. It can be tricky, but this is an area where we can help. We can walk you through obtaining your EFC and help you learn how to use it when comparing schools. I'll tell you more about that later. Two EFC financial aid formulas exist. The federal formula is tied to the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA. This is the federal aid application that students must complete to qualify for federal and state aid at any school they attend. The vast majority of colleges will also use the FAFSA to determine who will receive their own in-house aid. And I'll explain the FAFSA more in just a second. The institutional formula is tied to the CSS profile, which is the creature of the College Board. This formula is used by less than 200 private schools to determine who will get their in-house money. And a tiny number of public universities, including University of Virginia and the University of Michigan, also use the profile. The two formulas do have some significant differences. Sometimes the EFCs using each of these formulas will be similar, but other times they will not. To qualify for federal and state aid, families must file the FAFSA. The vast majority of state and private colleges and universities also use the FAFSA to determine who gets their own institutional need-based aid. The schools that use the CSS profile will use that aid application to determine who receives their own institutional financial aid. Starting with the 2024 to 2025 admission season, the lowest federal EFC a family can have is now a negative $1,500. That means a student experiences extreme poverty and has no ability to pay for college. In contrast, there is no cap on an EFC for high income families. It's possible to have an EFC of $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 or higher. When the EFC is high and need based aid is out of the question, you want to look for schools that provide merit scholarships to affluent students. As I said before, it's best to get a ballpark idea of what your EFC SAI will be in a child's freshman year of high school or even earlier. Obtaining a preliminary EFC will give you a rough idea of what kind of financial obligation you will face. Families will usually have to pay more for college than their EFC indicates that they can afford because most schools do not meet 100% of a student's demonstrated financial need. Consequently, it's important to identify the most generous schools that would consider your child an attractive candidate. We'll go more into more details about that here in a little bit. The EFC calculator can be tricky in terms of understanding which aspects of your finances need to be included and excluded when you complete the process. This is a service that we offer whenever I make this presentation, and I'll give you more detail later on how you can request an EFC analysis. Your EFC SAI is produced through a calculator on the College Board's website. It uses both of the methodologies we discussed before and produces two EFCs for you, one generated by the federal FAFSA formula and the other by the institutional profile formula. In order to get a complete and accurate EFC, you will need your latest tax returns and your investment records. Okay, let's take a couple of minutes to run through some EFC scenarios to give you an idea of what EFCs are possible. We're going to start here with an example from a middle class family with average income and low savings. I'm only using non retirement money in my examples because the formulas do not consider retirement money in their calculations. In this example, there's a married couple with one child heading to college and a younger sibling. So let's look at their EFC results. The EFC SAI for this family using the federal methodology is $3,479 and $1,371 with the institutional methodology. With this modest EFC, the family would ideally be looking for schools that provide very good need-based aid because their ability to pay for college is limited. This could potentially come from in-state universities or from private colleges that offer generous aid. Here's an example of how much aid a family with a low EFC of $3,479 could be eligible for when applying to an expensive school. It's important to add that only 6 dozen or so colleges and universities say they meet the full financial need of their students. Let's look at a higher income family. This family has more assets, home equity, and considerably more income. Like the previous example, there are 4 in the household with married parents, and the oldest is heading off to college. The EFC SAI for this household ranges from $50,319 to $42,767. There would be some elite schools that would provide this family with need-based aid. But with the vast majority of schools, the family would be looking for institutions that provide hefty merit scholarships to higher income students. There is no cap on a family's EFC, so some very wealthy parents will have EFCs that exceed the cost of an expensive private university. The two aid formulas used to provide a welcome financial perk to households with more than one child in college at the same time. The federal EFC, now known as SAI, traditionally would drop by 50% for families with 2 children in college. You can see how that worked here with the hypothetical family in the previous slide with 2 children in college. However, the FAFSA formulas starting with the 2024 and 2025 school year no longer shrinks the EFC for multiple college children. This represents a financial penalty for millions of families. Fortunately, the CSS profile still provides a sibling discount in its formula. The institutional EFC drops by 40% when 2 siblings are in college, and even more when there are 3 or more siblings in college. So, a family that might not qualify for need based financial aid with one child in college may be eligible with two or more in college if it's a school that uses the CSS profile. You can determine if a student would be eligible for need based aid by subtracting the EFC from a school's price tag. In this example, there's no chance for need based aid because the family's EFC exceeds the price of the private college. The student would not qualify for need based aid. Instead, the student would hope for a merit scholarship. In this scenario, the student would be eligible for need based up to $20,000 from the private college because the price of this institution is far more expensive and exceeds the family's EFC. As a practical matter, a family with an EFC this high would typically be looking for schools that provide generous merit scholarships. It would primarily be elite schools with excellent financial aid that would give this family need based aid. So, to sum up, let's look at college funding strategies informed by two different EFCs. First, families with a small EFC should look for colleges that provide generous need based financial aid, as well as their own state schools that will have need based program for residents and typically lower prices. Remember, it's also important to file the FAFSA as early as you can, since students tend to receive twice as much grant money from state programs and state universities. Write down the date to file your FAFSA. For the 2024-2025 admission season, the first opportunity to file the FAFSA will be sometime in December 2023. Normally, however, the first day to file is October 1st of your child's senior year. The reason for the delay this time is because of the extensive changes in the FAFSA that is keeping the U.S. Department of Education preoccupied. So now, families with large EFCs should look for private and state schools that give good merit aid to many students. The most elite private universities tend to give little to no merit scholarships because they have plenty of high income students who will come without a price break. So that gives you a sense of how the EFC plays out. After you obtain your EFC, you can hone in on what type of schools are the most appropriate to aim for. Now, the G in PEGS stands for graduation rate. This part of your school analysis is looking at what percent of students graduate and how long it takes them. Parents assume that their children will graduate in 4 years, but that usually does not happen. According to federal statistics, the 4 year graduation rate for private colleges and universities is 54% and 37% for state schools. So it's always important to check the 4 year grad rates since a delay in graduation can significantly boost the cost of college. There can be major differences among the same types of schools, as well as different majors. So always check. Also, check a school's freshman retention rate. Ideally, you want a school with a very high percentage of freshmen who return for a second year. If schools on your list don't have a high retention rate, find out why. Here are some graduation realities that unfortunately we all have to chew on. On average, a student now requires 5.3 years to graduate from a 4 year institution. Over 30% of students will not graduate in 6 years. For students with marginal GPA scores or a weak academic background, the probability of graduating is even worse. And half of all college dropouts become delinquent on their student loans within 3 years of leaving college. A source for 4 year graduation rates is the Federal College Navigator. This is a screenshot of how a school's graduation rates will be presented. You'll also see freshman retention rates. Unfortunately, a lot of resources of graduation rates only share 6 year or even 8 year graduation rates. What you want to look for is 4 year rates, which is just common sense. I don't know of any parents who would want to pay for 5 or more years of college. All right, lastly, the S in PEGS stands for salary. As part of your evaluation process, you may also want to look at a school's salary outcomes and consider them in the context of how much you're paying for your child's degree. Parents tend to overpay based on assumptions and rankings, but a big investment is not always worth it. Many families assume that salary will be largely driven by the school a student attends. Get into an elite school, and a student will be guaranteed a great salary and career. Statistics from the federal government shows that the academic major that is selected is hugely important. A great place to check out salary outcomes for individual majors at specific colleges is to take advantage of ROI research conducted by the Foundation for Research on Equal Opportunity. This is a think tank. Using federal data, researchers calculated the ROI for 30,000 bachelor degree and 14,000 graduate degrees. The freeop.org analysis of federal data shows that the ROI of majors within a school vary dramatically. You can see for yourself from this example from the University of Virginia. Biology majors, for example, ultimately have a negative ROI, while business majors have an ROI of more than $2 million. Here's another example from Texas A&M. You can also check the ROI on graduate degrees for 14,000 different majors. Graduate degrees tend to be much more expensive, which cuts down on the ROI for students. It is stunning the many negative ROIs at New York University. Another resource for overall earnings at individual schools is the Federal College Scorecard, but it does not break the salaries down by majors. Getting clarity about the pegs for the schools on your list is very helpful, but it's still not the whole picture. You're still probably wondering, will my kid qualify for financial aid, and how does that fit with grants, scholarships, and loans? So this brings us to the fourth key today. The common question, will my kid qualify for aid? This question is best answered when you understand how discounts, scholarships, and loans work to produce the lowest college cost possible. So let's look at types of financial aid first. There are four that you can see here. Just so we're all on the same page, let's run through their definitions real quickly. First, we have grants. They do not need to be repaid. They're primarily need-based, and they're often from the state or federal government, such as Pell Grants. The second related source of money is scholarships. They also do not need to be repaid, are usually awarded based on merit or other criteria such as geographic location, talents, athletics, academic merit, etc. And they come from a variety of sources: private foundations, corporations, and the colleges themselves. And then there are loans. We won't go deeply into college loans now, but there are two main types of federal loans strictly for the student. The more attractive option is the direct subsidized loan, where the government pays the interest while the student is in school and during grace and deferment periods. There must be demonstrated financial need to qualify for this loan. Then there is the direct unsubsidized loan, where the student pays the interest during all periods or defers interest while enrolled, which will accumulate. There is no financial need required for the federal unsubsidized loans. Then we also have direct plus loans for parents. These loans are designed to help families pay for education expenses not covered by other financial aid. And finally, here are some other options. You could get a home equity loan. Keep in mind the length of the repayment period and how that will impact your retirement plans. You can also get private loans to pay for college. These typically require very good to excellent credit. There are a range of institutions that underwrite these types of loans. Now, about two-thirds of students pay for college with the help of scholarships and grants. That type of financial assistance comes from the four sources that you see on the screen. The two biggest sources are from the federal government and the institutions themselves. All right, so let's look at what comprises federal aid. These are the three sources of federal help for parents and students. Most are income based, grants, work study jobs, loans for students and parents, and tax credits such as American Opportunity Tax Credit and the Lifetime Learning Tax Credit. Families who are shut out of federal grants can qualify for federal college loans since there are no income limits. However, without filing the FAFSA, parents and students do not have access to federal student and parent loans. The vast majority of federal money is awarded through the Pell Grant program. The maximum Pell Grant award is currently $7,395. Most families who are eligible for at least a partial Pell Grant have incomes below $70,000. The larger the family income and the smaller the size of the household, the lower the potential Pell award. So that's the federal government. Let's talk about the states. All states have aid programs, but they vary in what they offer. Most state grants go to students who require financial assistance. Some states, however, are dispensing most or all of their aid based on such factors as grade point averages and standardized test scores. Most of the states that award the majority of their aid by merit are located in the South, and these programs often benefit more affluent students. You can find links to the aid programs that are available in each of the 50 states by visiting the website of the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. Unless money is no object, it makes sense for a student to include one or more in state public universities on their college list. In state schools, however, won't be the least expensive option, even though that is a widely held belief. If you need financial aid, you need to be aware that public universities very rarely give need based aid to non residents. State universities routinely reserve that money for their residents. The tuition price for non residents is typically 2 to 3 times higher. Non residents looking for college money should consider merit scholarships, which are awarded regardless of income. The percentage of college money devoted to merit scholarships has grown dramatically. This is due to three reasons. Number one, administrators at state universities are interested in increasing their U.S. News rankings just like peers at private colleges. One way to do that is to give merit awards to attract students with higher academic profiles that U.S. News favors in its ranking methodology. Number two, public universities also use merit scholarships to attract non residents who will still typically pay more than in state students, which helps the institution's financial bottom lines, especially as schools still suffer from reduced state government funding beginning with the recession about 15 or more years ago. And then finally, the competition for good students is so high among many state universities that they find it necessary to boost their merit scholarship awards. State schools often have too many applicants to look at a student holistically. A school could have tens of thousands of applicants. Consequently, state universities must rely heavily on GPA and SAT ACT scores to make admission decisions and dispense merit awards. This makes it easier to get a good sense of what kind of merit scholarship a student might qualify for at a public university. Use Google to find scholarships that an individual school offers. Scholarships can be easier to get and larger at state universities that are less popular. For instance, what it takes to win a merit scholarship at the University of Colorado, a very popular destination, is more difficult academically than what it takes to win an award at the University of New Mexico or University of Maine. Keep in mind that many of the most popular state universities, which enjoy great brand names or are located in desirable locations, such as near ski slopes, can command higher prices for outside students. The sticker prices are going to be lower at schools that are not in high demand. Institutions that are most likely to meet their admission goals are public research universities like UCLA, UC Berkeley, Virginia, Michigan, Texas, and elite private research universities like the Ivies. These schools don't have to worry about attracting applicants with scholarships. Here's an illustration of how state universities can share their merit awards with families. This one was pulled off of the website of the University of Utah. Individual academic departments can offer their own scholarships as well. For affluent families, the most likely source of money will be from the colleges themselves. The vast majority of private schools provide merit money to affluent students. These colleges also provide need based aid. More than 20% of college students are enrolled in private, nonprofit colleges. Many parents automatically assume that private colleges will be too expensive and don't consider them, which can be a mistake. It's true that the price tags for private schools are more expensive than at in state universities, but the actual price won't always be as high. Think back to key number two. Higher education is actually a buyer's market, despite news about increased costs and high rejection rates. For years now, the tuition discount has been creeping up. The percentage of freshmen who receive grants and scholarships at private schools is actually at an historic high. It's now at 91%. For families who will not qualify for need based aid, private colleges and universities routinely award merit scholarships. Schools also widely practice what's called preferential packaging. The best awards go to the applicants that an institution wants the most. A student is more likely to obtain a good package if they are in the top 25% of the accepted students at that institution. What families also need to understand is that the more a college costs, the more likely a family would qualify for need based aid. At some schools, accepted students could end up with both need based aid and a merit scholarship. So what really matters is getting a discount. It doesn't really matter whether the discount comes via merit or need based aid or a combination of both. If you won't qualify for need based aid and money is tight, the worst place to apply to college from a financial standpoint are the most highly ranked universities. Look at the top of US News rankings and you'll see what kinds of schools this includes. Universities in the category include the Ivies, Stanford, MIT, Caltech, and Northwestern. Schools like these are deluged with high income candidates, so they do not have to offer merit scholarships or often a token amount in order to attract great candidates who are willing to pay full price. While there are nearly 2,800 four-year colleges and universities in the United States, there are about 6 dozen that claim that they meet 100% of the demonstrated financial need of all or most of their freshmen. The schools that are most likely to provide the best need based financial aid are the elite schools. If you get into schools like those on the slide and your family needs a great deal of financial help, you are likely to get it. In contrast, if you are wealthy and your child gets into one of these highly rated schools, you are likely to pay full price. The schools that offer the most generous need based aid are among the most highly ranked by US News and World Report. These schools tend to have large endowments, and they also attract a lot of students who pay full price, so they can afford to offer generous packages to those who need help. Students requiring financial assistance who get into schools like these have essentially won an education lottery. Of course, these schools are among the hardest to get into. On the other hand, the schools on this slide don't give merit aid to students who don't qualify for financial need. They don't have to because there are plenty of high income students whose parents will pay full price. The schools most likely to provide discounts to nearly all of their accepted students are the ones that aren't as well known. Many institutions that fall into that category are colleges and master's level universities. Colleges often only educate undergraduates and have few, if any, graduate programs. Master's level universities have few PhD program and aren't research intense. In contrast, professor research and educating graduate students are the number one and number two priorities of research universities. Undergraduates represent the third priority at these schools. The institutions that are least likely to provide merit awards are research universities. That's because they are so popular that they don't need to offer discounts to as many of their students. High income students who attend elite research universities are more likely to pay full price or close to it. One way to get a quick look at whether a school will provide good need based aid or merit awards is to head to the College Data website. Type in the name of a school on the homepage and then click on the school's financials link. You'll be brought to a page with the school's cost of attendance. Then scroll down and you'll see some interesting statistics. So, how do you evaluate a college's generosity? First, when looking at college financial statistics, you'll want to see what percentage of students receive merit awards and what the average is. Second, for need based aid, you want to look and you want to see what percentage of need did the school typically meet and what percentage of students had their full need met. And then lastly, you'll also want to see if the awards drop off after freshman year, which typically are the highest offers. Here's an example. You can visit collegedata.com and click on a school's financial link. Here we see how the financial data for a particular school is displayed. Specifically, I'll show you Pomona College. This is some of the info that you get. On this slide, you can see near the top that the school meets 100% of financial need. This is excellent. In fact, this is as good as it gets for someone who needs help with college costs. Pomona's average need based award is $51,856, which is high. This slide also shows you that Pomona does not give merit scholarships. The average non need based aid category is blank. That means a wealthy family with a high EFC will pay full price at this school. Here's a poor aid example. Loyola Marymount University only meets an average of 69% need, which is extremely low. The merit awards, the average of $11,616, are paltry at a school with a cost of attendance of $78,000. This is an expensive school for most students. In this example, you will see that the typical financial aid package is not nearly as good as Pomona's, but it does provide affluent students with much higher merit award than highly selective universities. Like many private colleges, Beloit College has to provide better merit awards to attract students to a school that does not enjoy a national reputation. Its average merit scholarship is $41,660. Now let's look at private scholarships. Private scholarships are outside awards offered by foundations, charities, companies, and civic groups. Parents often don't realize that private scholarships represent the smallest source of college money. The competition for nationally known private scholarships is fierce. In a recent year, for instance, the Coca-Cola Scholars received 112,000 applications for just 250 awards. This makes Coca-Cola Scholars about 25 times as selective as Stanford. Your children will face better odds if they focus on capturing local scholarships. These are the scholarships that turn up via high school counselors, libraries, parent workplaces, or in local papers. They aren't as easy to find, so not as many students will be applying. In fact, scholarship sites like FastWeb, scholarships.com, and the College Board's search engine usually don't have these local contests in their databases. Students may also have better luck looking at scholarships that require essays, since plenty of teenagers do not want to hassle with this requirement. Students who win private scholarships are often surprised to discover that their awards end up reducing their financial aid package. Since students have to report all outside scholarships to the financial aid offices, many schools see this as an opportunity to save some money and reduce the amount of money that they award to the student. In cases where the amount of the scholarship would push the total financial aid award over the cost of attendance, the federal government requires schools to adjust the financial aid award. You cannot receive more money than it would cost to go to a school. If a teen wins a private scholarship, the college could shrink his or her financial aid package by the amount of the award. So if a child wins a $3,000 scholarship, the college could cut the aid package by $3,000. In the best case scenario, the school will reduce the loan portion of the package by the amount of the outside scholarship, but it can also shrink the grant or reduce both the grant and loan portion. Each school maintains its own policy on how it applies an outside scholarship to a student's financial aid package. You will have to check with each school for its policy regarding outside scholarships. Ironically, this scholarship practice will not affect the students most in a position to afford college. Affluent students who receive merit scholarships from their schools do not have to worry about outside scholarships shrinking their awards. Higher income students who don't qualify for financial aid can earn any number of outside scholarships, and it will not jeopardize their institutional merit scholarships. Okay, so we're getting to the end of our presentation, and no doubt many of you are feeling like, yikes, this is so much information. How do we smartly process it and proceed? And it's a good question, which leads us to our final set of points. So, first, let's look at where we started. We started with the main challenge. Families often overpay for college, take on too much debt, and hurt their savings and retirement plans because they tumbled unprepared into the late stage college funding pressure cooker. Then we looked at the details behind these main points. Number one, parents must lead the college selection process. Two, higher education is actually a buyer's market. Number three, gather the pegs: price, expected family contribution, graduation rate, and starting salary. And you need to do this to start the process. And then lastly, understand how financial aid works to get the best price. So this brings us naturally to the conclusion that you need to ultimately start developing your college funding strategy now. And to help you do that, I said I'd offer you three things. Number one, a summary of today's presentation. Number two, a more extensive guide for parents on how to cut college costs. And then number three, a personalized report. And I've made your next step incredibly simple for you. All you need to do is visit myfreecollegemoneyreport.com. College education, again, is a buyer's market. And the old adage, knowledge is power, is true. When you act as an informed consumer, you can get the best education at the lowest cost and minimize the risk of damaging your retirement savings. Again, all you need to do is visit my website, myfreecollegemoneyreport.com. When you visit it, you'll be able to get the notes for today's presentation. You'll also be able to get the complimentary copy of the Savvy Parents Guide to Cutting College Costs. And then most importantly, if you don't do anything else, be sure to take 5 minutes or so and request the personalized report. This report is customized to you and will give you answers to three critical things every family needs to know before entering the college funding maze. Number one, how much colleges think you can afford. This is your expected family contribution or student aid index. Number two, if you will qualify for grants and or scholarships. And number three, how much you'll be expected to pay out of pocket. Again, it should take under 5 minutes to complete and get this report. All of the information in today's presentation, the note summary, the Savvy Parents Guide is good, right? So don't get me wrong. But but the only way that all of that information can help you is if you take action. So that is what I'm encouraging you to do. Take action by getting your personalized college money report. Paying for college is one of the biggest purchases in your life, next to a house. So do your research and get it right. So with that, thank you for joining me here today. I have enjoyed our time together. This concludes today's message. So again, head on over to myfreecollegemoneyreport.com. I'll look for you there, and thank you again.